Today we're talking about Jeff Buckley, but not just the music. Today we're talking about the image and the feeling that it brings, and the way he still lives on through a page like yours. I'm curious, Jessica, how did you first find Jeff? Or better yet, how did he find you?
He really did find me. I had known his cover of Hallelujah for years. I knew it was the standard. I remember reading in an article that he had passed in an unfortunate accident. I had seen bits and pieces of the So Real music video on MTV, VH1 over the years and never really connected the dots. But it was my best friend who started listening to his music in late 2022. She's always been the person that's cheering me on. You have to listen to this album. You have to check out this artist. And I do things in my own time, so it takes me
Mhm.
forever sometimes to listen to some of these albums and artists. But ultimately, throughout the spring of 2023, she was playing Jeff nonstop and telling me about his life. And I was in a weird place at that time. It was a huge transition through my personal life and my healing journey. One day I just kind of woke up and it's like Jeff was on my mind out of nowhere. It was so strange. And it's okay. This is going to be the day that I listen to Grace. And I listened to the album from start to finish, and I was taken within the first 20 seconds of Mojo Pin. I'm like, okay, this might be life altering right here.
I think it's the same for me too. It's something about listening to him, reading about him, and looking at
Mhm.
those beautiful photos of him
Yeah.
now more so than when I first came across his creativity. I'm in a different place in my life and how he speaks to me.
That's very true. Looking back now, I cannot imagine where I would be now without having discovered him when I did. And like you said, it's like you hear the music and it just becomes this catalyst for wanting to discover who he was. And once I read a couple of his quotes and it's like I saw his wisdom and his humor, it's like I only wanted to know more from there.
When you're curating, what are you
Mhm.
looking for? I mean, what makes you stop and post
Hmm.
something?
Typically, I will post for anniversaries of shows. So yesterday was the anniversary of his show at the American Legion in Los Angeles. So, okay, I have a photo for that. Sometimes it's just browsing through the photos that I have, and it's like, oh, I haven't posted that in a while. Or here's a quote that I think resonates with my followers. I think this is something that's inspirational for them. I tie things into my personal life. I'll post like little things for holidays, like Christmas. I always post the photos of him by Mary, where he's wearing the red jacket and he's holding a candle, and that's it's perfect for Christmas.
Yeah.
But little things like my birthday was a couple weeks ago, and I just ended up posting like my favorite photo shoot because it's like this is something that I love. So
It's your birthday
that's
present to
it's
yourself. Yeah, so tell me something. Do you feel like you're preserving something or do you feel like you're shaping how people sees things?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. I try my best to preserve his legacy in a way that I think that he would want it to be. I try to be as respectful as I can with my posts on other social media platforms. I think that a lot of people are quick to jump into joking about his death, and I don't know what they're trying to achieve through that. But I try to preserve him in a way that I think that he would want to be remembered. When I first started curating my page, it was really to show everyone who may not know who Jeff Buckley is, like, hey, here's this amazing musician. I just learned about him, and I don't want you to go another however many years without knowing who he was. He had a story to tell, and I want to tell it. I also think that part of it is I never got a chance to meet him in person. So if I had the chance, what would I want to say to him? What
Yeah.
would I want him to know? So in a way, it's also a love letter to Jeff.
You know, what's funny was I had a boyfriend at the time, and he's like, "We're going to go see a show." So we hop on our bicycles and go over to the Howlin' Wolf. And little did I know what I was about to see. I mean, and at first, all I could see was, oh
Yeah.
my God, here's this angel, this beautiful man. And it was the time when boys dressed in flannel shirts, which is why I fell in love with him and fell in love with Jeff. But they dressed in those jeans and flannel shirts and those big boots. And it's amazing how Jeff came back into my life.
I have been trying to find the set list from the Howlin' Wolf shows. I was able to track down photos from, he played there in August 1994, and then he also played there in December 1994. And the only thing I can find is the photos from both dates and the video of him performing Dream Brother. I have posted that before, and it's so blistering. It's such a beautiful performance. And it was actually included on the Grace Around the World compilation of live recordings. But it is beautiful. And in finding that video was groundbreaking because I had never seen that video. There's so much stuff that you see a million times, like when you're trying to curate a post. And then there are things that show up once or twice. It gets overlooked. I wish there was more from that show to preserve those memories.
You know what's really crazy? Because I'm such a fan, I didn't realize until seeing one of your posts, it was either the flyer or him looking at the billboard outside. And I'm like,
Yes, yes.
God, I was there. Because it was so long ago. It was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it'll be 32 years ago. It's crazy to think about. And Jeff Buckley's playing in New Orleans. It's such a strange timeline to think about because I wasn't aware of him in that moment, but I was just living my childhood experience. I was a kid when Jeff was doing his thing. I was 10 when he passed in 1997. I kind of look back at my life and it's like, oh yeah, I was in second grade.
How old are you? Can I ask?
I'm 30.
Okay, so you're 39, so I am 20 years older.
Okay.
So, how do you see the young kids versus your generation and my generation? How do you see how each generation sees Jeff differently or the same?
There's overlap for each of them. I look at the younger fans and I look at the older fans, and we all have a respect of who he was, realizing we lost him way too soon. We realize what he was capable of. I love having the insight of Gen X because there are times when the nuance and his humor and his little quips goes over the heads of like younger fans. I'm glad that I have my Gen X followers. I can comment my experience in the 90s, but it was different than everybody else's because I was a kid. And I'm glad to have my older fans that are able to give your experience. You know, you went to see him at these shows, and I have that insight from older fans of I met him, I had a chance to hang out with him after the show, I saw him at Glastonbury. To have that is so valuable to share those memories. With the younger fans, it's cool like, oh, my mom always plays Jeff Buckley in the car. That's how I learned about
Oh
him.
gosh,
Or yeah.
that makes me feel old. Great.
It's just really interesting to see the overlap. Unfortunately, I think with the younger generation, with social media and making memes about him, I think that so much of it is glossed over. They just paint him as this sad boy with a guitar, and he was so much more. I try to portray that. There's so much depth. There's so much societal influence in his music, and it's a tough nut to crack because there's so much beneath the surface.
Mm-hmm. Not comparing him to Judy Garland or Nina Simone or one of those people in that genre, I guess Edith Piaf, that he loves. You could see it in his face that he lived for that moment to create.
Yes, absolutely. And he wanted to create however he could. If it meant creating this really dreamy guitar intro, that reminds me of his performance of Strange Fruit at Live at Chennai. I remember that was one of the first songs that I had listened to from the Legacy Edition the summer that I discovered him. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this white boy is going to sing Strange Fruit. And holding my breath. And he goes into this guitar intro, and it's just the most pained and beautiful thing that I've ever heard. It is so profound. He lived to create what he could from that song. He just filtered it through his experience the best way that he could. There's so much commentary about how he would play that song in different keys and different intros. It all depended on the night and the mood and what he was feeling and what he wanted other people to feel.
I love the fact that performing for different audiences brought different performances. A true entertainer is reading your audience.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, watch him. It's what he does with his body and his face and how he gets those notes. It's incredible.
I keep thinking about the quote where he's like, when I sing, it feels like the bones in my face change shape. It's like they shift and they move. And he's like, they don't actually do that. If you watch him perform, he's going through it. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's giving 120, 130%. I would be exhausted by the end of that, even just in the audience experiencing a moment like that.
Well, hon, it was one of those nights, I can say this much. And it's like my friend described seeing Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall when she left. And same with Jeff that night. You knew you saw something.
Yeah,
You wanted to
yeah.
go home and just be in silence and think.
I can imagine. I've heard that from other commentary, that experiencing one of his performances was just so profound. You walked away completely changed. You had to take a moment to digest. That I can link back to the first time that I listened to Grace. It's like that album followed me that entire day, and afterwards it's like I have to listen to this album again. We had listened to the podcast with Daphne Brooks, and it was so close to home in the way that she talked about listening to Grace every day on her commute. And that became me. Grace just became so ingrained in my day to day. Then it moved on to Live at Chennai, the special edition that's on the streaming platforms, and his little jokes and his little monologues. Then I got into sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk, and it's a whole different facet. Every album, every performance that you listen to is just a different facet of who he was.
Let's take this into the relationship between muse and artist with he and Mary.
Okay.
Mary? Am I saying it right? Mary?
Yeah, it's Mary.
Mary.
She
Okay.
just spells it a little bit different.
So tell me your interpretation from reading and looking at the images and
Yeah, Mary was assigned to cover him as an up-and-coming artist in the Lower East Side for a publication in that area of New York called Paper Magazine in 1992. She photographed him on the rooftop of the building that he lived in with Rebecca Moore. She did photos in the hallway of him looking in a mirror. I have included some of those in our photos. From there, they just drifted apart. Mary came back into his life. She found out that he was playing at Chennai, and she's like, well, I have to check out this kid. I've never heard him play. I've never heard him sing. And she had some proofs from that photo shoot for Paper Magazine to drop off to him. She talks about how she was holding back sobs listening to his version of Hallelujah and completely moved that there was somebody this talented in her circle. And it's funny because she says that after the show, she meets him outside and she's like, he kind of recognizes me, kind of doesn't recognize me, but she's like, he's giving that Scorpio stare thing and kind of sizing me up. She's like, hey, I have the prince. He's completely different. He's warm and fuzzy and friendly. And I think that they were able to have a friendship that was very intimate. Jeff was very comfortable around her. Jeff gave her a voice because ultimately, when they were looking for the cover for Live at Chennai for the EP, he had proposed to Columbia. Unfortunately, they were holding their breath because it's a female photographer. Typically, we work with men in a field like photography that is so male dominated. Jeff really gave her a voice. She shot those photos in July, August of 1993 for that cover. There's that wonderful story where Jeff comes out and he's so exhausted because he's been up all night. He's been leaving messages nonstop on her answering machine about this photo shoot for Live at Chennai. And he's exhausted. He's been up all night and she's sitting there at Chennai and he comes out and just kind of collapses on her lap and falls asleep and takes a nap. And I think that is another example of the friendship that they had, that they were just so close to one another. And I can't say if there was anything physical that ever happened because we really don't have anything that points to that, but they were kind of partners in crime, really. The first time that she photographed him, Jeff looked at her and said, I'll be your muse.
I kind of see it as almost like a nurturing relationship or a mother kind of relationship. I,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she could have captured him if there was some sexual. Sure, there was sexual energy. How could you not look at Jeff Buckley and not have
Mm-hmm.
some kind of feels? But I think there was more of a nurturing, and that's probably why he let his guard down and pushed
Mm-hmm.
her as she pushed him.
I definitely agree with that, and that so much of their relationship was give and take. There was that sexual energy just because of who he was
Hmm.
and the moment that he created in his music that was so intimate. You listen to these songs and what he's saying and how he's singing it, and he created so much of that energy just from him. What other people did with that was ultimately up to them and how they perceived him. There was definitely a nurturing aspect. I know there are a couple times in interviews where Mary mentioned you just had a feeling that he wasn't going to be here that long. And unfortunately, she's not the only person who said that. I remember reading Andy Wallace, who produced Grace and later sketches, had felt the same way, that there was a feeling of impermanence. And these people have said it's not really because of his father's untimely demise. Jeff had this energy like a comet that comes around and in the blink of an eye, it's gone.
A star that bright can't burn forever.
Yes, exactly
Mhm.
that.
And
So
when I say
true.
that, I think of Judy Garland, Janis
Hmm.
Joplin, Jim
Hmm.
Morrison, Amy Winehouse, the people that left
Yes.
early. They couldn't have lived forever. There was no way.
No. No. When I look at the amount of creativity and energy that Jeff poured into Grace, and he ultimately had to write a follow-up album to that, and he really put himself in that position that I have poured my entire heart out, and now I have to regroup and find something
Mm.
for the next album. I think that he would have been okay with a smaller label because he wouldn't have had that pressure of them breathing down his neck. We need a new album. We need a new album. If he would have had time to ferment in the world and feel things and come back a couple years later with another album, the constant pressure from Columbia was killing him as well because he wasn't an artist that you can just hound until they give you a new single.
Mm-hmm.
It had to come from a place that felt authentic for him.
My goodness, certainly was there. I mean, even Sketches is brilliant.
Mhm.
It's he's such an artist. He just created in the moment.
Yes. And I think back to they were looking for another song to be added to Grace. It ended up being So Real. Michael Ty had come in. He was green to performing. I don't think that this was his first band. Jeff had these lyrics that he had written in his journal for years that became so real. They hashed it out in the studio, and it was one of the suits from Sony. I think it might have been Steve Berkowitz that said that they did it in one take. Something like that is just profound. You listen to that song and it blows you away.
I'm going to give you a couple of quotes here. I did my note taking. For a long time, death and rock and roll have been synonymous. Most of the good people are dead. We live in a culture that kills artists, wants them to die.
That last one I've posted a couple times from the interview that he did with Canadian TV. I think it was Much Music. And it's so true. When you put your entire soul out there to be perceived by others, it doesn't always stick. You find your people, but it's hard. And I feel like with the way that society's going, it's only getting harder. I'm glad that he doesn't have to market his music to an audience on social media. I'm glad that he doesn't have to see that aspect of things. And I do believe that rock and roll is really synonymous with death. It's always been that way. If you look further back in music history, even blues is synonymous with death because you have this environment in the deep south that blues artists were singing about. It just takes another form, is passed on to the next generation.
You ready for this one?
As
I love
best
you
as
for
I can
this.
be.
I'm going to hit you with it. Sometimes I think it's just a dream your soul had. And I think people are divine and eternal.
Yeah, that last part, especially for Jeff, there is something eternal about him. For the fact that 30 years after the release of Grace, that so many people are finding him, that so many people are falling in love with him. He has hit 12 million monthly listeners on Spotify. His album has been listed across the country with different record shops as being their top 5 for the week, or the fact that Lover You Should Have Come Over finally made it onto the Billboard Top 100. It's crazy how he is alive but not alive at the same time. He's here with us, but he's not.
A guiding spirit. He's a
Yes.
guiding spirit for me, seriously. And
Yeah, there are moments where it's like things just line up perfectly. And it's like, how did that happen? I remember when I discovered his music, the crazy dreams I was having about him, and talking to other fans and finding out that they had similar dreams, and it's so strange. It's so weird, but it's not weird at the same time. I think that he would definitely be coming through to people any way that he could, any lives that he could touch.
let me quote this for you.
Mhm.
Grace is what matters in anything. It keeps you from destroying things too foolishly, and it keeps you alive. And talking about the song Grace, it's a eulogy to no one. You don't fear anything because someone finally loves you for real.
That, yeah. That's one of the ones that I always keep in the back of my mind because I've definitely felt the pull with being a creative person. You have these moments where it's like, this is terrible. I'm just gonna destroy this. I don't want to see this photo. I don't want to read whatever it is that I wrote, but I have to practice this restraint and realize that I'm part of a creative moment. I'm expressing myself, and it's all a part of who I am. You know, you can burn down things and see what grows in their place, but I keep that in the back of my mind so much. We're not gonna rush into destroying things. We're going to give them a chance to sit and breathe and live with it.
Mhm. Everything that the word carries, grace is what matters in anything, especially life, especially growth, tragedy, pain, love, death. About people, that's what matters. That's a quality I admire very greatly. It keeps you from reaching for the gun too quickly. It keeps you from destroying things too foolishly, and sort of keeps you alive, and it keeps you open for more understanding. You know, people say grace for dinner. God is great, God is good. I see an invocation when I hear that word. And also, it's like the sound of, and he lets the sentence go right there. So when you post, do you feel people are more drawn to Mary's photos or someone else's photos? How do people interpret the difference?
A lot of it is dependent on what the algorithm is. At any given time, you can post the same thing at different times on a different day, and one might do really well and one might not do really well. It's like throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks. A lot of people enjoy seeing Mary's photos because they talk about the relationship that they had or the stories that Mary has told over the years. I think the intimacy in the photos and in the videos that we see. I posted a clip from a video that Mary filmed on the tour bus, and people were talking about how vulnerable he was. And he wouldn't have spoken to another person like that. That was purely a moment that he was having with her as a friend, as artist and muse, as two creatives. He wasn't going to speak to a journalist for whichever American publication the way. And I think that people enjoy seeing that very vulnerable side of him, who he was and not. And I don't think that he was one to really create a false image, but there was something in the relationship that they had that he was able to be more vulnerable and be more intimate. And that speaks through her photos and her film work that she did with him. We were talking about his spiritual energy still being in this world, and that brought up two things that I came across in my reading. The first of which was after he was reported missing, Mary had gone to a friend who had a little witchy shop. I think it was in Brooklyn, and was just kind of like, I want to know what happened to my friend. And she's like, I've never been one to really give in to this kind of thing, but she's like, my friend pulls out her tarot cards, and the first card that she turned over was the death card. And Mary was like just sort of shocked. And her friend that was doing the reading said, your friend is dead. And that gutted me a bit. And there's a bit of a happier story where Dave Laurie, his manager, his wife had convinced him to talk to a psychic after this was all done. And he's like, these people know exactly what to say to try and make you feel better. And it's like as soon as he walked in the room with this psychic, She was like, "You're wearing your friend's bracelet where his initials JB." And
Oh,
Dave is
wow.
just completely taken aback. And she's like, "It has something to do with water, but he wants you to know that he's better off." And Dave, of course, is a skeptic, and he's like, "Well, of course, they all tell you that this person is better off." I really think Jeff saying, "Hey, you can go on without me."
So let me give you this because we're on it. He gave that urgent, I have to live and get it done. So here's a quote. It's a song about my death, but not fearing it. Never gave it a second thought. It's been very natural. I just got into it.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting because now people are discovering his music and they're reading these things and they're like, did he really plan his death? Did he want to die? And I don't think that it was planned in any way. I don't think he wanted to hurt himself. I think he enjoyed living far too much. He enjoyed life. He enjoyed people, just the experience. Like death, whenever it comes, is just the next step, and you just have to walk through that door when you're presented with it.
Thank you, Jessica, for joining me today. And thank you for helping keep alive not just the photographs, but the feelings and emotions that still surround them. And thank you all for joining me for Refractions with Harper P. Gentry. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view.